Hey everyone, welcome to our group demo of sales rooms. I think we're probably going to have people trickling in a little bit over the next few minutes, but we're going to get started right away. So I'm Kim. I run operations and a little bit of marketing here at Arrows, if we haven't met yet. And then some of you may know we have Grant Jones, our head of sales at Arrows. He's going to be running most of this demo and talking about our newer product sales rooms at Arrows. But just to do some housekeeping, I guess, before we start, you can put any questions in the chat here. I'll be monitoring the chat. We also have Sherelle, our head of customer success here, and then Daniel, our CEO, is going to be popping into the chat a little bit too. So add any questions. And then we are recording this. We'll be sending it out afterward too. So you'll be able to share with your colleagues, or if you miss something or need to leave early, we'll be sending it out. So don't worry about that. Cool. You want to take it over, Grant?
Sure. Thanks, Kim. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Looks like that's up. I'm excited to chat with y'all about Arrow's sales rooms. Quick agenda for what we're going to run through today. I'll go through just a few slides to introduce you to sales rooms. Then we'll spend the bulk of the time in a live demo. And from there, we'll talk briefly about the pricing model and then make sure that we save some time for Q&A. For context, this group demo is explicitly for people who are existing Arrow's onboarding plans users. So this is going to be a demo where we sort of assume that you have a little bit of context and understand how the onboarding plans work at a high level. So I may make some references to the current onboarding plans product as we're discussing the sales rooms. Let's see. There we go. So the reason that we really built a secondary complementary product in these sales rooms is mostly due to the fact that a lot of our existing customers and prospects that we had in the pipeline that were thinking about onboarding plans desired something similar to the onboarding plans that they could use in the sales process. Similar to what they've been able to achieve with the onboarding plans, they wanted to make the experience better for their prospects and their buyers that were considering their product or service. And have all of their reps, sales reps in this case, communicating with higher quality and greater transparency, and ultimately just have a process that was a better way for them to show up for their buyers as they've been able to accomplish with onboarding and post-sales. So we created these, there we go, this sales room, and in a nutshell, it's a collaborative space for your reps and your sales reps and buyers to collaborate. Ultimately, these sales rooms serve two main functions. It's about enabling your buyer or champion within this buying account to sort of sell your product or service internally when you're not in the room. In turn, keeping momentum in deals between calls, and also help your seller align with their buyer on what the process will be to get to a decision and mapping that out concisely alongside all of the other resources that they would need to make their buying decision. So the outcomes that we typically expect to see are higher win rates, faster deal velocity, people moving more quickly because they have access to all of the things that they'll need in a much more convenient place. Ultimately, a better buyer experience. And then internally giving you more visibility into engagement to get a sense for which deals are actually progressing and actually have appetite to move forward at a faster rate than others. So with that, we are going to jump into a demo. And I'm going to sort of break this up into two ways. First, I'm going to show you the end result of a sales room, a crafted sales room. And what the buyer experience would be like once one of these things is shared with them. And then I'll take a step back and walk you through how you would go about as a sales rep living in HubSpot, creating one of these sales rooms and ultimately sharing it with a prospect or a buyer and then keeping it up to date. So what you're looking at here is an example of a sales room. In this case, I've got a very simple sales room where I've got high level why this buyer is considering, in this case, Acme is the name of the company that I'm representing here as a sales rep. So high level value prop, who the team is that they're working with and the main contacts on their side that we're working with. The next meeting that we have scheduled, which is pulling directly from HubSpot. Key milestones, which is kind of like a high level mutual action plan for how we're going to get to a decision for them. with due dates that we'll update as we continue having discussions. Sales deck, in this case, I have in my room here, and just lists of resources, and then the low level next steps in terms of what needs to happen between now and our next call. There are tons of different blocks that you can choose to add into a room here. But ultimately, this is designed to, in a way, replace the next steps email. Give your buyers, again, this space that they can see all of the information that's going to be relevant to them making a buying decision. And as they need to discuss internally, they may choose to share specific components of this room with other people at their company, other stakeholders. And when they do, they can copy those links, send them over. It'll take that other stakeholder directly to the room where they'll have all of the relevant context, as well as a direct link that scrolls them to the specific part of that room that's relevant for them, that's been shared. So again, this is a relatively simple version of a sales room, which I prefer as a seller to keep it as simple as possible and having them focus on the things that matter. But there are dozens of different types of blocks that you can choose to apply in your business when you have your sales reps sending out sales rooms. You can include things like lists of links, galleries of images, just notes that are text-based notes, next meetings like you saw in milestones. You'll notice some of these blocks have little HubSpot icons that reference that these are pulling information directly from HubSpot. You can do things like embed forms, decks, files, videos, call recordings, signature tools for signatures. Anything that's iframe friendly can be embedded inside of these rooms as resources. Now, I know one of the things that you're probably thinking, being that you already are users of onboarding plans, is, I can embed signatures or documents for signature inside of plans. I can embed videos inside of plans. I can embed forms inside of plans. What's the difference? What's the main difference here between these rooms and these plans? One of the key differences is that the plans product is very much task oriented, and there's things like due dates assigned to every single one of those tasks. And there's an expectation that people are completing those and then moving through a predetermined process that you set up in the plans. Whereas these rooms are much more open-ended, and it's more just about resource sharing. And there's not an expectation that they're going to complete every single component in here. Most of it is just for consumption for these buyers. But there is clearly some overlap where you may choose to have a form in here and then also a form in the onboarding plan that is expected to be completed. The onboarding plans are also sending automated email reminders, which is something that we're very cautious of doing in the rooms. And so there is no automated emailing that goes out because sales reps generally want to have a lot more control over any communication that happens with their prospects. But I'll show you in just a second what the sales reps experience is like to create and share and invite people to these rooms in just a second. How sales rooms and onboarding plans work together. Oftentimes, sales deals, they'll have these sales rooms associated with them. At the moment that they move forward, folks then have a workflow in HubSpot that creates an onboarding plan. When you group sales rooms and onboarding plans together through an account, it takes on this sort of tabular UI, where they'll be able to go to their onboarding plan. It is a unique URL, so all of your existing invitations and automations that you have sub will not be changed. They'll be able to get invitations to the explicit onboarding plan where they can then start working through that process. But they'll have the sales room as a tab that they can always reference back to if you choose to group them together. If you have people that are invited to multiple sales rooms or multiple onboarding plans, you've grouped those together. In some cases, there's people who have one sales room and then multiple onboarding plans if they've sold multiple products or services. This, what we call the customer portal, is essentially a roll-up of any rooms and plans that have been grouped together for these people to view. So there are some rare circumstances where people have several of these and multiple sales rooms and multiple onboarding plans. But in fact, we at Arrows oftentimes end up with a sales room, an onboarding plan for people using onboarding plans, and an onboarding plan for people using sales rooms. And so that customer portal helps achieve that sort of roll-up dashboard view. I'm going to actually, before I transition over to the experience of a sales rep creating and sharing one of these sales rooms, one thing I will point out is that this is designed for the sales process, and a lot of the roadmap items and things that we're working on are designed around making sales reps' lives easier and making buyers more inclined to say yes and get the decisions efficiently. But it is possible to use these sales rooms outside of the sales process. We do have some customers that are experimenting with using them in post onboarding as more of a resource center. You can, of course, change the naming convention here. It doesn't have to be called a sales room. You can title it something else, like a resource center or some reference to their customer name or your company's name, just like you can do with the onboarding plan. So there are a lot of possibilities with sales rooms, though the primary use case is in the sales process.
I'll jump in really quick, Grant, just to say, you kind of mentioned this, but the sales room itself can only be attached to a deal inside HubSpot right now. So that's the one kind of thing to note if you're thinking about using it for like a customer success use case. And a lot of people are using deals for like expansion, those types of customer success use cases, but just a thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Kim. So what I'm going to do now is open up HubSpot on obviously a demo deal here. And in this case, I imagine that this deal probably looks somewhat similar to deals that you all have in your HubSpot, where you've got an amount, close date, stage, maybe some variation of next steps. We've got things like sales confidence level in our HubSpot instance. And in our case, we are recording our calls and passing those call recordings into HubSpot in the form of notes. Some of you may have seen recently Kim's call recorder. What would you call that, Kim? Evaluation?
Yeah, guide, test, something like that.
Part of the reason that she did that is because Arrows sales rooms in particular, are able to use these call recording notes that get passed into HubSpot to make recommendations for how to customize your rooms after creating one from your template, which I'll show you in a second here. So the process is a sales rep. Let's imagine that I just get off of a discovery call with Steve here from Apple. I have call recording notes that get passed in. I'm going to click on Create Room and choose the relevant template. Similar to onboarding plans, you can create any number of templates for the sales rooms, and you can have them spun up here, either by clicking those, going through those 3 clicks that I just did. You can also set up HubSpot workflows to automatically create rooms once deals hit certain stages, or using whatever HubSpot deal trigger you want to in the HubSpot workflow engine. Now, in this case, we've had a room spun up here as I click through those buttons. Similar to what I just showed you, we've got high-level value prop, milestones, sales deck, resources, next steps, things that are blank, and then I like to include a reference to my calendar down here at the bottom as needed. Now, the other thing that's happening here behind the scenes is Arrow's AI the AI suggestions are looking through all of the information that's available on the HubSpot deal, including those call recording notes, including any email conversations that have gone back and forth, and any information that's stored in properties on that HubSpot deal, to make suggestions for how to update this room. So I have used sales rooms in the past prior to Arrows at other companies, and one of the biggest challenges I always had anytime that I tried to adopt them was I would be excited about using them, but very quickly they would get outdated. And it felt like just another thing that I had to keep up to date in addition to the deal that's in CRM. And so it felt like double work. These sales rooms are, on one hand, a little bit more important because they are actually customer facing or prospect buyer facing. But on the other hand, if you're only updating those and not the CRM, then internal visibility lacks. And so there's sort of a trade-off if you're having to update both of these things. So these AI suggestions will, at the point of creation, like you're seeing here, make recommendations based off of information on the deal to update the room to share with the customer or the prospect. These AI suggestions are also happening on a regular basis. So anytime another call recording notes gets posted, or anytime there's email back and forth, the AI suggestions are looking at the deal to determine, should an update be made to this room? And if so, I'll make the suggestion to Grant, the seller, to make that update. And then I go through this process of reviewing those suggestions. And if I like them, like these look pretty good to me. Then I'm going to click update. Updates that next step. And then let's go to the next suggestion. So right now I have a very generic value prop, and this is making a recommendation to make that a little bit more personalized to them based off of how they describe their problem. So I'm going to look through this quickly. I'm going to say, yeah, I like that a lot. I'm going to bold that. And I'm going to get rid of the competitor reference there just because I don't think it really applies as they're sharing this internally. Let's say, yeah, automate task tracking, enhance client engagement, and great. I'll update that. Next suggestion, milestones, initial Arrows demo. Yep, we just did that today in this example. We're actually going to do the integration deep dive prior to trialing. Everything else looks pretty good there. And this is interesting here because you are also able to start building out your own block library. So you can add blocks manually, but you can also save certain blocks to your library. Like in this case, I have a Arrows in HubSpot block, which has a few screenshots in it and sort of a gallery view of how Arrows connects to a HubSpot ticket. And I'm going to say, yeah, that's a good idea for me to include them in this room. Now, as I scroll down, you'll see this is what was just added, this sort of gallery view of these screenshots that I have in a saved block that the AI is trained to recommend adding. We see people do things with pricing and signature blocks at the appropriate time. Save those to their block library as well. For quick reference, you can see here when I open up the block catalog, this is where we saw earlier you can add new blocks. This is where you're also able to reference your block library that for larger companies, maybe a marketing team manages, or potentially a RevOps team. For smaller teams, sales reps themselves will manage their own block libraries there. So now I've got my room. It's ready to go, ready to be shared. Arrows will automatically generate a follow-up email. All of this in service of making sales reps' lives as easy as possible. One of the biggest challenges is getting off a call and figuring out how I want to basically equip them with all the information that they need without it feeling too overwhelming. So Arrows will generate a follow-up email based off of the content of the room, making reference to a few of the blocks that appear to be most important. Of course, you can copy this message and then send it over through Gmail or HubSpot or whatever email client you use. In this email, when the prospect gets this, they'll obviously have a hyperlink that takes them to the entire room itself. And then again, if anybody chooses to click on the specific references to blocks, it will open the room and scroll them down to that relevant block that has been clicked on there. Now, of course, Arrows wouldn't be Arrows without a deep HubSpot integration. The CRM card, of course, is a piece of that, being able to create these rooms via HubSpot workflow or create them via the CRM card and then have quick visibility into engagement that's taken place on these rooms. Of course, as people are engaging with the rooms, leaving comments if they choose to engage with you that way, viewing the rooms, viewing specific blocks on the rooms, all of that is going to be captured in the timeline activity. And we are in the process of adding more and more properties to HubSpot as well, similar to the onboarding plan, so you can create more robust reports to be able to look at deal health, across emails and calls, in addition to room engagement, to see which deals actually have momentum and appear to be progressing. In this particular sales room, there's going to be minimal activity here. But you will be able to see on a visitor by visitor basis who is engaging with the room, how long they're viewing the room, which particular blocks they're spending time viewing. And depending on the access settings that you set up, you'll be able to either just see via IP address like I had there if you leave it open-ended, or if you do require an email and a name to enter, then you'll be able to see explicitly who it is that's viewing the room and engaging with it. I think that about sums it up. Kim, is there anything that I missed that you think is worth pointing out?
I don't think so. I think just like thinking back to like the high level of kind of what these do for a sales rep specifically, especially because our audience here is probably mostly like operations and people in like customer success and customer onboarding primarily. So I think just thinking about whether you're considering sales rooms for yourself or if you're operations and for your sales team, or if you're just thinking of like, should I recommend this to our sales team to look into? I think the thing to think about is like, so your sales and the way I've been thinking about it recently is your sales team gets off like an initial discovery call or a demo with their prospect. And then what happens next typically? So this is it's been an interesting exercise with us internally using sales rooms ourselves. Grant does sales at Arrows, but every once in a while myself and Daniel, our CEO, will fill in. Grant's already awesome at like sending a follow-up email immediately after a demo. Me and Daniel both are really bad at it. And so it might be like several hours before we actually get to the follow-up. And then we have to go back to the call recording to remember what we said we would send them. And so this has really been a game changer for people like me and Daniel who are sales reps who are not as, I guess, on top of the process. So it's literally like we get off of a call, the meeting notes are in HubSpot, all of the context is in HubSpot, we create the room, and then it's basically giving us all of the personalized content that we need for that buyer, and then drafting the follow-up email and all of that. So it really makes the follow-up process much higher quality than what I was doing before, and a lot easier. It's literally like a 5-minute process to send this customized sales room for that buyer to the buyer right after the demo, and then you can move on to the next call right from there. So I think just like thinking about it in that context of like sending out high quality, excellent follow-ups that are personalized for that buyer within just 5 minutes after a demo ends.
Totally. Yeah, great call out. And in this demo, we really only showed that initial creation and the initial sharing. Again, as I'm as a seller having ongoing conversations, I'm pulling up the room, typically on a call, and saying, hey, here's where we're at so far. Let's make sure these are still the next steps that we're going through. This is still the plan. These dates still feel good. And then obviously adding content here as they request it, like security documentation or specific technical questions. I'll include answers in here. And then making reference back to this room using the block links so that, again, they're constantly being pulled back into this room where they have all the context and they can see how far we've come with their evaluation so far. And one of the things that's been surprising to me to hear from Sherelle, our head of customer success, who handles most of our onboardings, is that this is designed to be buyer facing and customer facing, but he's actually shared with me that he ends up referencing these sales rooms in addition to the internal HubSpot deal itself, where I may put notes. He finds himself referencing these sales rooms to see what is the buyer expecting, what's sort of been transparently discussed this whole time. What's their specific value prop that they're keying on. So it gives him sort of a little bit of a different level of context that maybe he didn't have before, that he knows this customer explicitly is aware of and is on the same page about.
Cool. I think if there are any questions, definitely put them in the chat here. We can still answer those quickly. Otherwise, I don't know if you're going to get into this, Grant. You can also email us afterward and happy to answer any questions directly too.
Yeah, in terms of next steps from here, this is high level just for you guys to have a little bit of context. The pricing model for adding sales rooms for existing onboarding plans users, similar to the onboarding plans, includes up to a certain number of rooms that you can create per month. There's no user limits. With the introduction of AI in the rooms, there's no AI limits either. As a general expectation, I'm just realizing that I misspelled that. Added a couple ATs. As a general expectation, in most cases, it's an additional $500 a month to add on sales rooms for existing onboarding plans users. Of course, there's some variability there depending on whether you're on an annual plan of onboarding plans or monthly. So if you have any interest in either yourself learning more about these sales rooms and considering adopting them for your company, or want to introduce this potentially to your sales teams, then we'll send a follow-up email with the recording that you can, of course, share with them, but we'll include in there a link to book a demo with me, and we can engage in a more formal process.
Cool. I just put a link in the chat too for the page on our website that just goes into more depth about sales rooms. We'll send that in the follow-up email as well. But yeah, we'll send out the recordings. You can share it around. And then like Grant said, we'll include a link to book a demo directly with Grant. And then you can ask any questions and follow up there too. Cool.
Great. Thanks
Thanks,
everybody.
everyone.